Okay, let's unpack this incredible source material. Those opening words, they just immediately grab you, don't they? Space, the final frontier.
They really do. Instantly iconic.
And we're thrust right onto the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. They're, 3 days into this star mapping mission?
That's right. According to the text, further out than any Earth ship had ever gone before. Yeah. Really uncharted territory.
Which, as this text shows, is exactly when things tend to get, intense.
Yeah, really intense.
So we're diving deep today into these excerpts from Star Trek: The CORBOMITE Maneuver, and they document this first contact situation that just escalates like crazy, from total mystery to, existential threat. It's a real pulse pounder reading through it.
It really is. And, it's a classic scenario for a reason. That whole idea of first contact, it's just naturally loaded with tension, isn't it?
Absolutely. You have no idea what you're dealing with.
Exactly. You're meeting an intelligence that could be completely alien, different motives, different capabilities, maybe even a whole different way of seeing reality.
And this text, it gives us such a vivid, almost minute-by-minute look at how challenging that can be, especially under, extreme pressure.
It's a fantastic case study.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive, yours and mine, is to really pull out the key insights from this specific text. We're going to follow the sequence of events they describe.
Step by step.
Yeah, step by step. Really dig into the choices they made when, frankly, everything was on the line. And try to figure out what this particular encounter tells us about facing the absolute unknown.
And trying to connect, right, trying to bridge that gap with beings who might operate on totally different principles.
It's fascinating stuff.
It really is. And it's more than just, a space adventure story. It's a look at strategy, crew psychology under incredible stress.
And what happens when your usual playbook just doesn't work anymore?
Exactly. The limits of diplomacy, maybe when faced with something utterly new.
Okay, so they're out there, mapping stars, 3 days beyond the known edge, and the first sign of trouble. It's not even something they see initially, is it?
No, that's right. The text says the first alert is just contact with an object. That's it. No visual yet.
Just a blip on the screen.
Essentially. But it's moving towards them. Fast. Like light speed fast, the text says.
And Sulu immediately tries evasive action.
He does. Standard procedure. But here's the first really weird thing the text highlights. This object. It isn't just coming at them in a straight line. It's changing direction too, sir. Keeps coming at us.
Yeah.
It's actively mirroring their movements. Matching their course.
Like it's locked onto them somehow.
Precisely. It seems like it.
And they try to figure out what it is, hail it, scan it, nothing.
Total blank. Deflectors don't stop it. The text says no signal coming from it. It's just undetermined. Spock specifically notes negative when asked if it's a vessel.
So not a ship in the conventional sense.
Doesn't seem like it. Spock calls it some type of device. Clearly artificial, manufactured, but not behaving like any ship they recognize. And its intent seems to be just following them, matching them.
Until it doesn't follow anymore, until it makes them stop.
Exactly. The text notes that as the Enterprise slows, the object slows too.
Yep.
And it just stops.
Yeah.
Right in front of them.
Holding them there. Just holding them.
Yeah. Spock's observation is it seems to want to just hold us here. And Kirk's log entry, mentioned in the text, says this standoff lasts for 18 hours.
18 hours. Wow, just sitting there staring at this thing, unable to move.
Can you imagine? The tension must have been unbelievable. Just waiting, wondering.
Wow. 18 hours. And they managed to get some readings during this time, but does it help?
Not much, really. It just adds to the mystery. The text describes it as solid, but its composition is unknown.
So they know it's physically there, but not what it's made of.
Right, and they get dimensions. Each of its edges measures 107 meters, a perfect cube.
107 meters. That's pretty big.
Definitely substantial, and its mass is a little under 11,000 metric tons. So yeah, big, solid, artificial, perfectly geometrical, but totally alien in nature and purpose.
So 18 hours of this. The crew must have started talking, speculating, right? What was it?
Oh, absolutely. The text gives us a glimpse of that. Some crew members suggest it's a space buoy of some kind, like maybe a marker or a warning buoy.
Okay, that's one possibility.
But then there's the more unsettling idea someone voices. Maybe it's flypaper, something designed specifically to trap ships like them.
Whew, flypaper. That's chilling.
Isn't it? And amidst all this uncertainty, you also see the frustration bubbling up. The text includes Lieutenant Bailey getting impatient.
Bailey, right. What does he say?
He basically says, we've got phaser weapons. I vote we blast it. It just wants to take action, any action.
And Kirk shuts that down pretty fast.
Immediately. With that sharp line, the text quotes, "I'll keep that in mind, Mr. Bailey, when this becomes a democracy."
Ouch. Establishes who's in charge, no question.
Definitely. So, okay, 18 hours pass.
Yeah.
Kirk decides they can't just sit there indefinitely. Waiting isn't working.
Inaction isn't a strategy, right? So what's the plan?
The decision, according to the text, is to try and disengage, plot a course away, specifically a spiral course, trying to just move away from the object.
Seems logical. After just being held passively, maybe it'll let them go if they try to leave.
That seems to be the hope, a logical next step.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and honestly, pretty terrifying. Because trying to leave, that completely changes the game. The object's behavior shifts dramatically.
It really does. This is a critical turning point in the text.
So what does the text suggest about its intent, or maybe its programming, based on how it reacts when they try to pull away?
Well, the moment the Enterprise plots that course and engages engines, the cube reacts immediately and aggressively.
Yeah.
The text is very clear. It doesn't let them go. Sulu reports, "Still blocking us, sir."
So it moves to intercept again.
Yes. "Still coming toward us," Sulu says. But it's worse than that. As it pursues them, it starts emitting dangerous radiation.
So it wasn't just passively blocking now, it's actively harmful.
Exactly. The text tracks this escalation really carefully. First, it's radiation from the short end of the spectrum increasing, then very quickly, radiation nearing the tolerance level. And then, the chilling update. Radiation passing the tolerance level, entering lethal zone. They try to leave, and the cube responded by becoming actively deadly.
Lethal radiation. Wow. So it wasn't just a marker, and maybe not just flypaper. Attempting to escape triggered a lethal response mechanism.
That's what the sequence in the text strongly implies, yes. Based only on these events, it suggests one of two things, really. Either its primary function was to prevent any vessel from leaving its vicinity, using lethal force if necessary.
A very aggressive border marker, maybe?
Or perhaps it was some kind of test, and attempting to flee was considered the wrong answer, triggering a punitive response, or maybe a defensive one.
That flypaper idea suddenly sounds much darker.
Doesn't it? The radiation could be a weapon, or maybe just a byproduct of the energy needed to chase them. But the key thing, strictly from the text, is that this deadly aspect, it only revealed itself when they tried to break contact.
Okay, so evasion is clearly not working. It's failed. The radiation is lethal. The text says the object is only 51 meters and still closing. They're trapped.
They are absolutely backed into a corner. The text paints a picture of imminent danger. Crew death from radiation is seconds away if they don't do something drastic.
There's no choice left, really.
None. And so Kirk gives the order. The text lays it out. Laser crew, stand ready. Then, lock phases on target, Mr. Bailey. And finally, fire main phases.
Firing their main weapons at point-blank range, basically.
Very much. The text says point-blank range is closing. It's a last resort.
And the result?
Immediate. The text states clearly, the cube has been destroyed, ship's damage minor.
Okay. So, threat neutralized. Ship okay. Seems like a win.
On the surface, yes. A successful defensive action. They were under lethal attack. They defended themselves. They survived with minimal damage.
But destroying it like that, doesn't it feel, I don't know, potentially short-sighted? Based only on what we've read so far in the text, did destroying this thing prove it was just a dangerous object that needed removing? Or could this action have maybe bigger consequences?
That's the million-dollar question at this point in the narrative, isn't it?
Yeah.
The text before what happens next definitely leaves that hanging. Like we discussed, one theory was it was a space boy, a warning buoy.
Right.
If that was its purpose, then destroying it.
Yeah.
Well, whoever sent it might see that as incredibly hostile, right? Regardless of the Enterprise's reasons, like the lethal radiation.
Yeah, they wouldn't know about the radiation, maybe. They'd just see their buoy destroyed.
Exactly. Or if it was part of some kind of test, destroying the testing device, well, that's certainly an outcome, but maybe not the outcome the testers were looking for.
So destroying it solved the immediate problem, the lethal threat.
It did. The text presents it that way, but the implications of that act, based purely on the text's earlier hints and speculations, they are very much up in the air at this moment, unresolved.
Okay. Crisis seemingly averted. The cube is gone. They scan the area afterwards. What do they find?
According to the text, absolutely nothing. Kirk asks for status, and the report is blunt. Nothing, Captain. No contact, no objects in any direction.
It's just gone. No debris, no energy signature.
The text doesn't specify debris, but implies a clean destruction and no lingering presence. which in a way just makes it weirder, doesn't it?
Yeah, it almost deepens the mystery. What was that thing, and where did it come from?
And that lack of immediate follow-up, that emptiness, leads directly to the next stage. Speculation, what comes next. And Spock, of course, has a logical take.
Always. What's his prediction?
He states it quite clearly in the text. We'll discover the intelligence, we'll send out the cube. He assumes there's a creator. And he adds, intelligence different from ours or superior? Probably both.
So he immediately connects the cube to a higher power, essentially, and assumes they're formidable.
Yes. He sees the cube not as the main event, but as a precursor. A signpost pointing towards something much bigger, more advanced, and now possibly aware of them because they destroyed its probe.
And Kirk, does he agree? Does he want to turn back?
He acknowledges the logic, the potential danger, but the text shows him firmly reiterating their primary goal. Mission of the Enterprise is to seek out and contact alien life. He's not backing down. Logic might suggest retreat, but the mission compels them forward.
That's Kirk, all right? Always pushing the boundary.
And you get that interesting little exchange right there in the text.
Yeah.
Where Kirk kind of gently needles Spock. Suggests that Spock constantly questioning his command decisions actually gives Kirk emotional security.
Huh. I remember that line. It's a great character moment.
It really is. It underscores their dynamic, the intuitive, sometimes impulsive captain, and the hyper-rational first officer who keeps him grounded, or at least makes him justify his leaps. It's a balance.
So they survived. But Kirk isn't just breathing a sigh of relief. He's immediately thinking about how the crew performed under fire.
Exactly. The text shows him doing an immediate post-mortem. He notes specific issues. Mr. Bailey Cruz was sluggish, and Ellsman engineering decks could have been faster too.
He's identifying weak points, areas where they could have reacted better.
Precisely. He sees it not just as survival, but as a learning opportunity. Where did they hesitate? Where were they slow? And this isn't just critique, it leads directly to action.
Training drills.
Intensive training drills. The text quotes his directive. Program a series of simulated attacks and evasion maneuvers. Keep repeating the exercise until we're proficient.
And he sets a high bar, doesn't he?
Uncompromisingly high.
Yeah.
His goal, stated in the text, is try for 100%. He wants to drill perfection into them, learn from this near miss, and ensure they react flawlessly next time. It shows his leadership style, rigorous preparation, pushing for peak performance.
But the text also introduces a very important counterpoint to this relentless drive for perfection, doesn't it? Through Dr. McCoy.
Yes, absolutely. McCoy represents the human cost, the toll this kind of pressure takes. The text specifically mentions he's especially worried about Bailey.
Bailey again, the one who wanted to blast the cube and who Kirk noted was sluggish.
The very same. And McCoy's concern isn't just, general medical worry. It's a direct challenge to Kirk's handling of Bailey. He argues, quite forcefully according to the text, that Kirk might have promoted him too fast. That Kirk overworked him, pushed him, expected too much out of him.
So McCoy sees Bailey's sluggishness not just as a performance issue, but maybe as a sign he's cracking under the strain.
Exactly. A sign of psychological vulnerability, maybe exacerbated by the pressure Kirk is putting on him and the whole crew with this intense training.
And this disagreement, it escalates, right? McCoy doesn't just voice concern.
No, the text says he intends to make it official. He tells Kirk, I intend to challenge your actions and my medical records. I'll state that I warned you about Bailey's condition.
Wow, that's serious, putting it in the record.
It shows a fundamental conflict in their approaches. Kirk is focused on the ship, the mission, the collective performance needed to survive out here. McCoy is focused on the individual, the well-being of the crew members, warning against pushing them past their breaking point.
Two valid perspectives, really. The mission needs peak performance, but the crew are still human.
Precisely. And the argument over Bailey brings that tension right to the surface. It's a key part of the human element the text portrays. Oh, and the text also throws in that little aside about the yeoman.
Oh, yeah, where Kirk says he only has one female to worry about. Her name's the Enterprise.
Right. Just a quick line, but it adds another layer to his character, his total dedication, almost obsession with the ship itself.
Okay, so they've faced the cube, destroyed it, maybe drawn unwanted attention. They're now drilling relentlessly, trying to reach 100% proficiency. But there's this internal friction, this worry about the human cost, especially concerning Bailey. How is the crew, based on the text, really processing all this and getting ready for whatever Spock predicted is coming next?
Well, the text shows the command staff processing it quite differently. Kirk's method is action. Drill, drill, drill. improve performance, eliminate weaknesses through repetition. He's tackling the trauma by trying to ensure they're technically flawless next time.
Controlling what he can control.
Exactly. McCoy, on the other hand, is focused on the psychological impact. He sees the stress fractures, particularly in Bailey, and argues for caution, for recognizing human limits. His approach is empathy and concern for the individual toll.
So the preparation phase isn't just about simulations, it's also about this internal debate, this tension over leadership styles and the human cost of being out there.
Right. The text portrays the preparation as this mix of external drills and internal conflict, all under the shadow of Spock's prediction that something bigger, and probably smarter, is likely on its way.
Spock was right, wasn't he? The wait isn't long.
Not long at all. The text delivers that next alert with stark immediacy. All decks to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill.
Chilling. And the contrast with the cube encounter sounds immediate. This new object, it's different.
Oh, vastly different. The descriptions in the text immediately convey something on a completely different scale. It's much larger coming toward us. Sensors report an exceptionally strong contact and much greater energy reading.
Bigger, more powerful. How much bigger?
The text gives us Spock's reaction, and it's stunning. He says the reading goes off my scale, Captain. Must be a mile in diameter.
A mile.
A mile. And even when it's still 5,000 meters away, the text notes it still fills the screen. This thing is colossal. It absolutely dwarfs the Enterprise.
Okay, that's terrifying. A mile-wide ship appearing out of nowhere?
And the power dynamic is established just as brutally. They immediately prepare for evasive action, just like with the cube, but this time
It doesn't work.
it doesn't even get started. The text says, something's grabbing us. Hard overloading, sir. All engines stop. Instantly, they're caught.
Immobilized.
Just like that. All power gone.
All engine power, yes. Completely helpless, caught in what seems to be a tractor beam or some similar force from this massive ship. No chance to run, no chance to fight back. Game over for maneuverability.
Wow. Okay, so they're held fast. What does Kirk do? Try to talk.
He does. He orders hailing frequencies opened. Sends the standard greeting, according to the text. We convey greetings and await your reply. Trying to initiate peaceful contact.
And the reply comes. It does. And well, it's chilling. The text identifies the source. Balok, commander of the flagship Fesarius of the First Federation.
Balok, the Fesarius. Okay. And what's his opening message?
Friendly.
Anything but friendly. His very first communication, quoted in the text, is pure judgment. He calls them primitive and savage.
Oh, primitive and savage. Why?
He explicitly links it back to the cube. He says they ignored a warning buoy and having then destroyed it, which, in his view, demonstrates their intention is not peaceful.
So he saw the cube as just a warning buoy, and destroying it was proof of hostility.
That's exactly how he frames it. And based on that judgment, he states they are now considering the disposition of your ship and the life aboard, basically deciding whether to let them live or die.
But Kirk tries to explain, right? Tries to give their side.
He does. Immediately. The text quotes him, trying to clarify. The warning nature of your space buoy was unknown to us. He points out they destroyed it as a simple act of self-preservation because it emitted radiation harmful to our species. He's trying to say, look, we didn't know and it was trying to kill us.
Exactly. A logical explanation from their perspective. Defensive, not aggressive.
Does Balok listen?
Not at all. The text shows the response is immediate and absolute. No further communication will be accepted. Full stop. And then a threat. If there is the slightest hostile move, your vessel will be destroyed immediately.
So no dialogue, no negotiation. Judgment passed. Sentence pending.
Precisely. They've been assessed, found wanting, and Balok isn't interested in appeals or explanations.
This paints a picture of an incredibly powerful, technologically sophisticated, but also maybe rigid, uncommunicative intelligence.
It certainly seems that way. Kirk even notes their methods are brilliant, extremely sophisticated, and they prove their reach immediately. The Enterprise tries to launch a recorder marker, presumably to warn Earth.
A message in a bottle.
Yeah. And Balok's ship.
Yeah.
The Fesarius. The text says it destroys the marker instantly. Your recorder marker has been destroyed.
So they're watching everything, every move. Escape is impossible. Signaling is impossible.
They are completely trapped and monitored. And then comes the final verdict from Balok, stated plainly in the text. You have been examined. Your ship must be destroyed.
Just like that. Destroyed.
But with a strange, almost cruel twist of courtesy, Balok grants them 10 Earth time periods known as minutes to make preparations.
10 Minutes? Preparations for what? Being destroyed?
That seems to be the implication. He adds, again, according to the text, if you have deities or beliefs, perhaps you wish to make preparations, assuming they need time for last rites or prayers.
That's incredibly cold. 10 minutes to contemplate oblivion.
It's brutal, and they're completely helpless. The clock is literally ticking down on the bridge view screen.
What does Kirk do? How does he handle those 10 minutes with the crew?
He broadcasts to the entire ship. And his message, as recounted in the text, is really interesting. He tries to bolster their morale, but not with false hope about survival. He focuses on fear itself.
Fear of the unknown.
Exactly. He says the greatest danger facing us is ourselves an irrational fear of the unknown. He argues, philosophically almost, that there's no such thing as the unknown, only things temporarily hidden, temporarily not understood.
He's trying to give them courage, even in the face of death, trying to believe in understanding.
Yes. He clings to the idea that intelligence capable of a civilization is capable of understanding peaceful gestures. That surely this advanced life form must be advanced enough to eventually understand our motives. It's a projection of hope and reason against overwhelming, unreasonable force.
Does he try anything else? Any last-ditch effort?
One final gesture. He announces to Balok, our vessel will now return the way it came, trying one last time to demonstrate non-hostile intent, just wanting to leave.
And does it work? Does Balok respond?
No response. And the text confirms all engine systems show dead. They're still trapped, utterly powerless.
So the countdown just keeps going, the minutes ticking away, the pressure must be immense. How does the crew react? We know McCoy was worried about Bailey.
And his worries were completely justified. The text vividly describes Bailey's reaction during these final minutes. He cracks under the pressure.
What does he do?
He starts panicking, questioning regulations, saying things like, it's the end of everything. He even lashes out at the others on the bridge, calling them robots, and wound up toy soldiers because they're trying to maintain their discipline and composure.
Oh, wow. That's rough. He completely loses it.
Completely. It's a powerful depiction of what that kind of ultimate stress can do to a person. Kirk is forced to relieve him of duty, and McCoy escorts him off the bridge.
A direct payoff to that earlier tension between Kirk and McCoy about pushing him too hard.
Exactly. McCoy's concerns are tragically validated right here in these final terrifying moments.
Wow. So the stakes just went from high to, well, existential. Utterly overwhelming power, no communication, the clock ticking down to zero. What does this extreme pressure cooker really reveal about the crew's limits and the captain's role in holding things together?
Well, it shows a stark difference from the cube encounter, doesn't it? Against the cube, they eventually had an option, even if it was destructive. Here, against the Fesarius, the text emphasizes their complete powerlessness.
They have nothing. No weapon, no shield, no escape.
Right. And Bailey's breakdown vividly illustrates that training and discipline, while crucial, have limits when faced with what feels like certain inescapable annihilation. It really highlights the psychological fragility at the edge of the unknown.
And Kirk.
Kirk, despite the hopelessness, maintains that outward command presence. He focuses on morale, on trying to frame the situation. Even if it's just philosophically, he keeps searching for something, even if it's just words of encouragement. He's the focal point, trying to hold back the panic.
And the Fesarius itself, Balok, based only on what they've said and done so far in the text.
Based only on the text up to this point, Balok and the First Federation seem incredibly rigid, powerful, and unforgiving. Their communication style is pure judgment and ultimatum. A single perceived mistake destroying the buoy, even under duress, warrants total destruction, with no interest in context or explanation. It paints a picture of an alien intelligence operating on a logic that seems, from a human perspective, utterly devoid of empathy or flexibility at this moment. The communication barrier seems absolute.
So the countdown, it just keeps going. The text notes the time calls, 7 minutes left, 4 minutes, 30 seconds, 3 minutes.
You can feel the tension ratchet up with each call. And even in this, the text gives us that little touch of gallows humor from McCoy.
What does he say?
As Spock calmly notes the time, McCoy mutters something about Spock's annoying fascination for timepieces. A little dark humor right at the end.
Trying to cope, I guess. Meanwhile, Kirk is still searching, isn't he? Refusing to give up.
Absolutely. The text says he's thinking, there must be something to do, something I've overlooked. He won't accept defeat.
But Spock, logical as ever, offers a pretty bleak assessment.
He does. He uses a chess analogy quoted in the text. Chess. When one is outmatched, the game is over. Checkmate. From a purely logical standpoint, analyzing the power difference, the lack of options, Spock sees no winning move left.
Checkmate. Game over. But then Kirk thinks of a different game.
Exactly. The text gives us that key exchange. Kirk says, almost musing, "About chess, Mr. Spark." And then, pointedly, "Poker. Do you know the game?"
Poker. Not logic, but bluffing. Deception. Nerve.
That seems to be the lightning bolt moment, yes. The text strongly implies that poker is the inspiration. If you can't win with strength, maybe you can win with psychology, by making your opponent think you have strength you don't possess.
A bluff. A massive, desperate bluff.
With literally seconds left on the clock, he hails the Fesarius one more time. But this time, no pleading, no explaining. He issues a warning.
Okay, walk us through this. What does he actually say? The text quotes it, right? This is the CORBOMITE maneuver itself.
It is. And it's structured brilliantly for psychological impact. First, he adopts this tone of almost solemn duty. Our respect for other life forms requires that we give you this warning.
Setting them up, making it sound official, serious.
Precisely. Then he introduces the core fabrication, a substance known as corbomite. Just invents it out of thin air.
CORBOMITE. Sounds vaguely plausible, I guess.
Enough to cause a moment's hesitation, maybe. Then he defines its function, and this is the genius part. A material and a device which prevents attack on us. How? If any destructive energy touches our vessel, the reverse reaction of equal strength is created, destroying the attacker.
Whoa! Mutually assured destruction. You shoot me, you blow yourself up too.
Exactly. A perfect automatic defense based on turning the attacker's own power against them. It completely flips the power dynamic if it's true.
And to make it sound real, he gives it a history.
He does. He claims, since the initial use of CORBOMITE more than 2 of our centuries ago, no attacking vessel has survived the attempt. Makes it sound like established, proven, ancient technology they possess.
So it's not just a new trick, it's something deeply ingrained in their defense.
That's the implication he creates. And then the final challenge, the ultimate poker move. He basically says, look, death has little meaning to us. Almost welcoming it. And then dares Balok, if it has none to you, then attack us now.
He calls their bluff. He turns the countdown back on them. Attack us if you dare risk destroying yourself.
It's an incredible gamble, based entirely on words and nerve.
Okay, this is the absolute crux of it. The high-stakes gamble. Based purely on the text, why does this bluff work? What does Balok's reaction tell us about strategy when you literally have nothing else?
Well, the text gives us Balok's immediate reaction, and it's incredibly telling. He says, we grow annoyed at your foolishness. However, and this is the key part, it was well played.
Well played. He acknowledges the move.
He does. That's the first sign it's working. So why does it work? Based only on that reaction in the text, it seems the concept itself, this corbomite, this idea of automatic mutual destruction, is just plausible enough to sow doubt.
They can't be sure it's not real.
Exactly. An intelligence advanced enough to build the Fesarius, however judgmental, would presumably value its own existence. The sudden introduction of a potentially catastrophic, unknown variable Overoya, a defense that turns their overwhelming power into a suicide weapon, forces them to pause and reassess the risk.
Especially combined with Kirk's delivery, right? That seeming indifference to death.
Yes. That confidence, that apparent lack of fear, sells the bluff. It makes the threat seem credible. Balok's well played suggests he recognizes the strategic brilliance, the cleverness of introducing such a potent unknown, even if he's annoyed by the audacity of it. It's the power of creating a believable, potentially devastating consequence where none existed before.
And you see the effect on the Enterprise crew immediately too, right? The tension just breaks.
But that moment is palpable in the text. Spock makes that curious comment about Balok reminding him of his father.
Prompting McCoy's classic line, "Then may heaven have helped your mother."
Right. A perfect little moment of humor releasing all that pent-up stress. And significantly, the text notes Bailey asks to return to his post.
Bailey, the one who broke down. He wants back in now that there's a sliver of hope.
It shows how dramatically the atmosphere shifted. The immediate threat is lifted, even if it's based on a lie, and Balok confirms it. The text quotes his next message. The destruction of your vessel has been delayed.
Delayed, not canceled.
Right. The bluff bought them time, created doubt. But Balok immediately follows up with a new demand. We will relent in your destruction only if we have proof of your corbomite device.
Uh-oh. Call the bluff. Prove it exists.
Exactly. They're out of the immediate fire, but now they have to substantiate a complete fabrication. Kirk's response, quoted in the text, pure defiance. Request denied. He doesn't even try to fake it further, but then he pivots, asks for visual contact, Captain.
He wants to see Balok and the ship.
Yes, and Balok, perhaps intrigued now, perhaps still testing, permits it. First, they see that scary alien image on the screen.
The puppet, as we find out later.
Right. Balok even says something like, "I trust seeing my form has pleased your curiosity." But then Kirk pushes for visual of the ship itself, and that's when the next big clue drops.
What do they see? Not the mile-wide Fesarius.
No. The text describes it as a small ship. Tiny, really, compared to the Fesarius image. Only about 2,000 metric tons.
Okay, wait. The energy readings were off the charts. How can a small ship generate that? This must have caused confusion.
Big time. The text notes the crew's reaction immediately. "I thought the power was off in the gallery." Someone realizes something doesn't add up. "Something's going on, Captain." This huge discrepancy between the Fesarius image and power readings and this tiny ship now visible. It's the first concrete evidence that maybe the whole terrifying encounter was some kind of illusion.
A deception. Okay, so destruction is delayed. Balok wants proof of Corbomite, which Kirk refuses. What's Balok's next move?
He changes the plan. The text quotes his new decision. "I will conduct you to a planet. There you will disembark and be interned. Your ship will be destroyed."
So not immediate death, but capture, internment, and then ship destruction. Still pretty grim.
Still grim, but different. And crucially, he starts towing them with this small ship. "Tractor beam again," the text notes, "taken under our power." And he gives a final warning against trying to escape.
So they're being towed by this surprisingly small ship, and Kirk, is he just accepting this?
Outwardly, yes. His log entry, quoted in the text, states his plan. A show of resignation. Play along. But inwardly, he's already analyzing the new situation, looking for an angle.
Based on the small ship.
Exactly. He realizes, as the text notes his thoughts, Bay's tractor beam has to be a heavy drain of power on a small ship. That's the key insight. Holding the massive Enterprise requires enormous energy for a vessel that size. His question, will he grow careless?
He's shifting from psychological warfare to exploiting a potential physical weakness. Brilliant.
It's pure Kirk, always looking for the edge. He waits, lets Balok tow them for a bit, watching for that moment of carelessness.
Does it kind of...
It seems so. Kirk senses the tow ship pulling a little ahead and maybe powering down slightly. The text says sneak power down a bit. Perhaps a momentary energy conservation.
And that's his window.
That's the window. He gives the order for a radical maneuver.
Right.
Right angle course, sheer away from him no matter which way he turns. Basically use full power to break the beam's grip.
But that's risky for the Enterprise too, isn't it? Pushing the engines that hard?
Extremely risky. The text emphasizes the danger. 8,000-degree heat. Heat, reads the console, 2,000 degrees above maximum. Engineering warns, she'll blow soon. They're redlining everything, risking their own destruction to break free.
Does it work?
It does. The text confirms the success. "We're breaking free, sir." They snap the tractor beam.
Yes. Freedom. But then what? What happens to Balok's small ship?
Immediately after they break free, they pick up a signal. A very weak signal, the text says. It's Balok.
Balok? What kind of signal?
He's sending a distress signal to the Fesarius.
Yeah.
His ship is crippled. The text reports his status. Engines are out. His life-sustaining system isn't operating.
Oh my god. So the strain of towing them and then them breaking free, it disabled his ship.
That's exactly what the text reveals. Pushing his small ship systems that hard, likely trying to maintain the beam against their surge, overloaded everything. Just as Kirk gambles might happen, the small ship wasn't just a tugboat. It was Balok's actual vessel. And it's now dead in space.
And the Fesarius. The mile-wide ship. It was never really there.
The distress signal being sent to the Fesarius strongly implies the big ship was somewhere else. Or perhaps just the image was projected from the small ship, but the small ship is where Balok actually is. And he's in trouble.
Okay, so the entity that just threatened to annihilate them, held them captive, is now helpless and sending a distress call. Kirk's reaction, gloating, leave him there.
No, absolutely not. His reaction, as shown in the text, is immediate and decisive. Plot a course for it?
He's gonna help him, after everything.
Yes. He explains his reasoning clearly to the crew, quoted in the text. First Federation vessel is in distress. There are lives at stake. By our standards, alien life, but lives nevertheless.
Wow, that speaks volumes, doesn't it? Sticking to their principles even after being tested like that.
It's a powerful moment. It demonstrates that their mission statement, their core values about seeking out life and understanding, weren't just words. Faced with the reality of a helpless opponent who had been incredibly hostile, Kirk chooses compassion and aid. It's the complete opposite of Balok's initial judgment and threat.
So they go back. Who beams over? Just Kirk.
Kirk leads the party. He takes Dr. McCoy, naturally, to examine and treat the aliens if necessary. And, significantly, He takes Lieutenant Bailey.
Bailey. He lets Bailey go.
He specifically offers it to him. The text quotes Kirk. "A face of the unknown. I think I owe you a look at it." And Bailey immediately volunteers. "Me, sir. I'd like to volunteer."
That's huge for Bailey, a chance to face his fear, literally.
It really is. It provides a potential closure, or at least progression, for his character arc within this specific narrative. A chance to confront the source of his terror and maybe prove something to himself and the captain.
Okay, so Kirk, McCoy, and Bailey beam over to Balok's crippled ship. What do they find?
They materialize inside. The text notes the environment is breathable, maybe slightly higher oxygen content. And then, the big reveal.
The real Balok.
First, they see the puppet. The scary alien face from the view screen is just sitting there, inanimate. A dummy puppet, as the text calls it. And then the real Balok appears.
What does the real Balok look like?
The text doesn't give a detailed description in these excerpts, but the implication is clear. He looks nothing like the terrifying puppet. He looks, well, non-threatening. And Balok confirms the entire thing was a deception. He calls the puppet his alter ego. Why use it? His explanation, quoted in the text, "You would never have been frightened by me."
He thought they wouldn't take him seriously or be intimidated by his real appearance.
Apparently. He admits the whole encounter, including the Fesarius image and even the distress signal, was a test. "It was a pleasure testing you," he says. "He had to discover your real intentions, especially after they destroyed the cube."
So the giant ship, the threats, the countdown, even the ship disabling itself, all part of an incredibly elaborate test.
That's what he claims. He reveals he has no crew. He runs the entire complex, presumably meaning the Fesarius illusion and his own small ship, all by himself.
One being running that whole show. Incredible. But why? Why go to such extreme, dangerous lengths?
His motivation, as stated in the text, is surprisingly lonely. He says he misses company, conversation. He's out there alone managing this complex technology, and he wants interaction. He seeks an exchange of information, cultures.
He put them through hell because he was lonely and wanted to see if they were nice people.
Essentially, yes. It seems he felt this extreme test was the only way to safely gauge the intentions of powerful newcomers before revealing his true, vulnerable self and seeking connection.
Wow. Okay, so test passed, apparently, because they came back to help. What happens now? Does he just let them go?
He proposes an exchange. He wants to keep one crew member aboard his ship voluntarily to facilitate that exchange of cultures he desires.
A cultural exchange ambassador? Who volunteers?
Bailey. Mr. Bailey steps forward.
Yeah.
And his reasoning, quoted in the text, is really quite humble and perceptive.
What does he say?
He says, "I'll make plenty of mistakes, but you'd find out more about us that way, and I'd get a better officer in return." He acknowledges his flaws, but sees the value in offering Balok an honest, imperfect look at humanity, mistakes and all.
That's quite a turnaround for Bailey, from cracking under pressure to volunteering for deep space diplomacy with the guy who caused it.
It really is. It suggests he's found a way to channel his experience, perhaps seeing this as a path to growth and proving his worth in a different way.
And Balok accepts this. What's the final interaction between Kirk and Balok?
Balok seems pleased with the arrangement. And his final observation to Kirk in the text is fascinating. "We think much alike, Captain, you and I."
Thinks alike. How so?
He mentions their shared pride in their ships, maybe their shared willingness to test boundaries, to take risks. He sees a kindred spirit in Kirk, despite the vast differences and the adversarial start. It hints at a potential understanding, a common ground found after conflict.
So the mile-wide killer ship was an illusion. The terrifying, judgmental alien commander was a lonely intellect in a small ship running a dangerous test because he wanted conversation. What an incredible twist. What does this final reveal tell us about judging by appearances and maybe the surprising ways understanding can happen?
It really drives home the central theme, doesn't it? The absolute danger of making assumptions based on fear and incomplete information. The Enterprise crew reacted logically to the terrifying illusion Balok presented. Their fear was real, their predicament seemed real.
Balok played on those assumptions perfectly.
He did. His test was incredibly effective at generating fear and forcing decisions under duress. But the real breakthrough, the possibility of actual connection, only happened when Kirk and the crew chose not to act on their previous experience of hostility. When they saw the distress signal, they responded with help, not suspicion or revenge.
That act of goodwill overriding the fear response.
Exactly. That's what seemed to pass Balok's test and reveal his true motive, which, according to the text, wasn't conquest, but connection. His methods were extreme, maybe even unethical, using fear like that. But his stated goal was understanding.
So the resolution suggests that looking past the intimidating facade, dropping your guard, even when you feel threatened, can sometimes lead to completely unexpected and maybe positive outcomes.
It certainly suggests that possibility, that genuine goodwill can sometimes break through barriers that bluffs and threats can only temporarily delay.
What a roller coaster going through this text. We start with this weird, inexplicable cube.
That turns lethal when they try to leave.
Right. Then the internal crew stress, McCoy versus Kirk over Bailey.
Leading into the encounter with the absolutely overwhelming Fesarius and its seemingly rigid, hostile commander.
Followed by that incredible, desperate CORBOMITE bluff.
Which buys them time, only to lead to the reveal of the small ship, the chase, the breakdown.
And finally, the ultimate reveal. It was all an elaborate test by a lonely being seeking connection, resolved through an act of compassion and Bailey volunteering for cultural exchange.
It packs so much into one sequence of events. Fear, strategy, psychology, deception, compassion. The whole spectrum of first contact challenges.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? This whole deep dive into the CORBOMITE maneuver text. How often do we do that in our own lives? You know, face something new, maybe intimidating a new project, a difficult conversation, even just meeting someone different and immediately judge based on those first impressions, that initial fear or uncertainty.
It's a natural human tendency, isn't it? To react defensively to the unknown, to see the potential threat before the potential connection.
Do we default to wanting to, metaphorically blast it, like Bailey first suggested, or can we find that moment, like Kirk did at the end, to push past the fear and just seek to understand what's really going on?
And it raises that interesting question about power, too. Balok used the illusion of overwhelming power based on fear and deception. Kirk used the bluff, also based on deception. But what ultimately resolved the situation positively?
It was the decision to help Balok when he was helpless, an act of genuine goodwill.
Right. So what kind of power is ultimately more effective or maybe more meaningful when you're navigating your own uncharted territories? Perceived strength built on fear, or genuine connection built on understanding and maybe a bit of compassion.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The CORBOMITE bluff was genius, a necessary lie for survival. But the resolution came from the truth of their own principles when they chose to help.
Or think about it from Balok's side. He built this terrifying facade, conducted this dangerous test, all because, deep down, he just wanted company. He was looking for connection, but used fear as his opening move. How different might things have been if the approach, from either side, started not with threat assessment, but with the assumption of potential common ground?
Something definitely worth mulling over as you face your own final frontiers. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.